Skyrim was one of the most popular releases of year 2011 and 2016 and 2017. Skyrim is a role-playing open-world game and I just cannot believe I'm just explaining what Skyrim is. Well, basically anyone who plays games heard about 5th Elder Scrolls game. As most Bethesda game studio releases, Skyrim came with editor that was used to making of this game, and community went wild with it. Well, let's just start again. What if I say to you that this RPG that is something between Gothic, a classic old German RPG with cult status following in Europe, and good old BioWare type of games that is free for anyone on Steam. Well, anyone who owns Skyrim. Well, classical old Skyrim or its legendary edition. Not these Skyrims. You have to own these Skyrims. Ugh, damn it, Bethesda, how many times you want me to buy some game? Well, after this incredibly entertaining intro, let's look at Enderal. Yes, it's mod for Skyrim. And yes, it's using original Skyrim, which has only 32-bit engine, which can be a bit limiting, mainly to resource management and RAM, but it's worth it, trust me. Game. And yes, I call it game. Size of Enderal is bigger than some commercial releases, so I think it's only fair to call it game. Enderal was developed by Shure AI, and the game is set in its own original universe called Win, which is also settings of previous Shure AI mods for previous Elder Scrolls games. Yes, they are doing it for a while. You play as a refugee hiding on a ship that is sailing towards the continent of Enderal, by which is game name. You created your own character, and then you are discovered by a member of crew, which you kill obviously, and you would get away with it. But then you are visited by a mysterious veiled woman, which makes you fall unconscious with her magic. And you are discovered by other crew members and they decide to kill you. And I will not say more. The less you know about game's story, the better. Story is the main draw of the game. And let me tell you, this is one of the better stories in this medium. And it's not short story. I did most of the side quests in my first playthrough, and it was longer than I expected. Much longer. And here is the thing, most quests are really well done. Of course there are bounties, as bounty hunter. You just go to places and kill targets and return forever. But most quests are much more complicated. For example, I had to pass tests to join a merchant company, or I help young boy to find treasure so he can help his poor family. But in the end, I just keep the treasure.
Firespark's pretty much the eldest of Narath's.
Great story is why I compared this game to ones of BioWare. Also, during most of the story you have companion.
Let's hope he can tell us a thing or two about these visions.
Number of companions may seem few compared to BioWare, but both of them are extremely well done. And I really hate to spoil things, but there are few questlines that have their own temporary companions, which are also excellent. Difference is that between mission companions are not following you everywhere around like in BioWare games, but have their own life and daily routines in game world. And they don't tell you their own personal story moment you met them. They feel more like humans then. While playing Mass Effect, for example, sometimes I had feeling that some of the companions are with me just because designer decided that. Another well-written and designed thing is world building. A lot of books about game world, system of knowledge about everything in game world, and physical in-game representation of fast travel. You have to reach specific points where you can flying with bees called Myret for pay, or use teleportation scrolls if you have fun. Also, another nice detail is that a lot of caves have multiple entrances and acting more realistic than caves that you see in many other games. Lore affects gameplay. For example, Sinistra, the magic school, is banned in land of Enderal, so when you want to learn it, you have to buy books from shady individuals. And I think it's good time to talk about gameplay. Here is where game diverges from its source game. Gameplay is more similar to Gothic series than Elder Scrolls games in many aspects. Look, even character screens are awfully similar to one from first two Gothic games. Basically, you don't have Elder Scrolls leveling system where you earn skills by using them. And then when you get enough skill points in this invisible bar, you level up to next level. Well, here you get experience point for doing quests and killing things. And if you have enough, you get into new level. It's classical level-based progression structure. When you achieve a new level, you can immediately level up your health, mana or stamina. Also, it will give you one memory point, for which you can unlock new abilities from trees in this illusionary space. You have high armor, bows, one-handed weapon, 3 magical schools, crafting and werewolf abilities. You can get here by meditating. And by combining these trees, you will get your class or dual class. And some combination of dual class can unlock special secret classes. You can learn about secret classes within the game world, for example from books or dialogues. Second, you will get learning points, with which you can level your passive stats with. Like for example, heavy armor, light armor, two-handed weapons. More you invest into, for example, heavy armor, less damage will you take when you are wearing heavy armor, of course. But you cannot just unlock that abilities, you have to buy a special learning books from vendor. For example, this blacksmith have books about heavy armor, light armors, melee weapons and handicraft. It's similar to Gothic where you can find special teachers for your skill. And last one are crafting points, which are working same way, but just for crafting. I like the system. It kinda makes sense within the boundaries of the game world. Another change from Skyrim is that enemies are not auto-balanced towards your level, and instead each part of the world has its set difficulty with its own monsters, which creates natural barriers, similar to Gothic. I'm sorry that I'm still talking about Gothic, but that game is definitely really underrated. Outside of Europe. And I promise that if I will talk one more time about Gothic, I will torture myself by playing Fallout 76. Back to the point. Since the world and specific enemies have specific set strength, it's really satisfying to return to location where you were barely able to survive, this time completely obliterating enemies. I also like system of stars. Each quest have number of stars that gives you informations about difficulty of quest. I really disliked system of Witcher 3, where every enemy and quest constantly warns you about its level. It was kinda immersion breaking when you were fighting drowners, and same drowners just few meters away were 3-5 levels higher. And still you get information about quest's difficulty. Progression system and exploration are really satisfying. What is not satisfying is combat. As mentioned million times at this point, Enderal is based on the Skyrim engine. And if you remember Skyrim combat, it's not exactly great. It's floaty, imprecise, generally all over the place, and wonky physics and animations won't exactly help. Many people prefer stealth archer build because of that. Well, Skyrim is generally easy and enemies are always appropriated to your level. Problem is, with Enderal and its relatively reasonable but higher difficulty, what is small annoyance or bigger annoyance in vanilla Skyrim can be difference between life and death here, and source of some serious frustration. I started as two-handed weapons and heavy armor berserker-like type, with class called Keeper, but later I started to be more stealth-oriented. Oh, and speaking of stealth, it's kinda barely working. Stealth eye is even more broken than in vanilla Skyrim, especially when your level of stealth is higher. In vanilla Skyrim, when you press stealth button, half enemies are suddenly blind, but here are blind, deaf and probably temporarily brain dead. With higher stealth you can casually murder them, and they will just confusedly run around. Sadly, I cannot speak much about magic. I didn't use it very often, and I played my first playthrough, which was, by the way, much longer than I expected, completely without it. But I had really fun. And I almost did completionist run and finished practically everything. Graphics is good. Enderal has many new animation and better lighting than vanilla. It's solid looking except for animation. What is totally superb is soundtrack for Marvin Cobb, and his soundtrack is better than many AAA releases. It can be disturbed, twisted, really emotional, and is enhancing many great story moments. And music during simple wandering around is also great. And now, technical side. Oh boy. As mentioned multiple times, game is using engine of Skyrim, which honestly wasn't bleeding edge technology at release. And thing is, Skyrim age kinda worse than many other games from 2011. Shuai is pushing Skyrim engine to its edge. And even if Enderal looks significantly better than Skyrim, sadly it's running like shit. Yeah, I said it a bit colorfully, but I couldn't help myself. You have to play with settings a bit, toggle it to get it playable. Personally, even with bit of tampering, I had worse FPS than in Witcher 3. and I only had GPU usage about max 60%. And there were some totally random spots where FPS were absurdly low. Like here, semi-indoor, there is nothing here, basically, and I cannot understand why I have only 19 FPS. What is really impressive is that sure I was able to make elevators and some really complex story sequences with Skyrim scripting. If you ever used Skyrim editor, you knew it's far from modern and user-friendly, and I would rather dance barefoot on broken glass bottles than do something in it. Enderal is a great experience, deeply flawed, but still worth it. If this was commercial game, I would say it's interesting Eurojunk with its character and personal charm, but bad technical side, badass free community modification. It's one of the best and definitely worth playing, especially since it's free. And as one of few mods, it has its own page on Steam. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and now I'm gonna eat some nice crisp piece of meat. Farewell until next video.